Good evening. Welcome again to Women to Women. I'm Carol Paz, your hostess, and again we have a very special lady, specialized lady with us tonight. But first, before we talk to Christina, I'd like to thank our sponsors, carsonnow.org, the internet site, the very best internet site for the latest local news here in Carson City. We'd also like to thank Apex SCF, which teaches the best and the latest methods for helping you to stay alive, whether it's at home, at work, or on campus. And of course, we want to thank our wonderful sponsors, the Nevada Appeal and the Record Courier, who always encourage us to shop locally, support our small businesses, and look for those special books of coupons in their Sunday editions. So let's welcome at this point Christina Conti, who is, as I said, a very specialized lady. Welcome, Christina, to the show.
Thank you so much.
Nice to have you.
Nice to be here.
Now, Christina, I promised that because you are in a specialized line of work, I let you introduce basically what is your title here in around the Carson City area.
I am the Washoe County Health District Public Health Emergency Response Coordinator.
That's very long.
Right.
Okay. Now, why does this mean you're so specialized? What is it? Are you the only one? Are you a member of a team, a group?
Throughout Nevada, there's actually only 3 of us that are specifically trained to do what I do, which is working with the hospitals and healthcare organizations for their emergency preparedness. There are other people that work in public health emergency response coordination, but there are a few of us that work with those healthcare organizations, the hospitals specifically, for their preparedness and response.
Okay, so this is a very accountable position, okay, to all of us
yes,
here in northern Nevada. All right, before we get into some of the challenges and some of the experiences that you've already had, I would love to ask you, tell us a little bit about who you were as a kid growing up. Where did you grow up, and what kind of a kid were you? What were your interests?
I grew up in California. I'm a California girl, born and raised. Moved here for college. I was very athletic, very into sports.
Okay.
And so that's pretty much how I spent my childhood. I played year-round basketball, and I swam, did volleyball and soccer, and I think there was water polo in there for a minute.
Okay. So you stayed fit to be able to play in all of those sports,
Yes,
all right?
yes.
You had a regimen to your life and a discipline to your life as well, is what happened.
Right. Yeah. My parents joke that nowadays I'd probably be diagnosed as ADHD, but they just kept me busy because I just couldn't sit still.
Okay, you don't come across so far as a retired teacher who's taught with many ADHD students, okay? And I was married to one, and I have a son who's one, and exceptionally bright, energetic people, very capable, very talented in so many ways. Well, are you the only child in your family?
No, I have an older sister.
Okay, how much older? What's the distance between the two of you?
I think it's 20 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
So very close. in
Very
other
close,
words.
absolutely.
All right. Were you competitive with one another in sports?
We were really lucky. My sister really excelled academically, and then in the sports that we played different positions and had different strengths. So, for example, in swimming, she was a phenomenal distance swimmer, and I couldn't. So I was a good sprinter. So even though there was naturally a competition there, we were never lined up in the same things to really go head to head.
So you could really share without being competitive of one another. Okay?
Absolutely.
And kind of iron sharpening iron, okay, observation-wise. So what brought you to Nevada?
UNR.
UNR. You chose that as your place of education.
I did, yeah.
And what did you major in there?
My undergrad is in criminal justice and counseling and educational psychology, and then I stayed at Nevada and got my master's degree in public policy and public administration, and I specialized in law.
All right, so you are well qualified with a background, educationally speaking, for the work that you do today.
Absolutely.
All right, help us connect the dots here. Okay, I know that as also a person, okay, with degrees from Ohio State and master's degrees from New York State, that you want to put all of that education somewhere into your future, because not only did you spend a lot of time doing it, but it costs big bucks, okay? So where's the connection between criminal law and what you do today?
Actually, the connection was the the budget.
Okay.
I worked at our district attorney's office as a program coordinator for a program called the Victim Witness Assistance Center, and worked there for about 3.5 years. And through all the budget constraints, my position was eliminated.
Okay.
And so that's how I found emergency management. Is our emergency manager, Aaron Keniston, saw me and saw the skill set that I had and knew that he could teach me about emergency preparedness. And so he's the one that took me from a victim services world with criminal law into the emergency response world.
Okay. What were those, when you look back and reflect on it, what do you think were those aspects of your behavior or your talents that he called upon? He saw them, he observed them and said, you know, in these days we might call that sequestration. Losing a job, okay?
Right.
Because of budget constrictions.
Right.
But what was it that he saw particularly in you, do you think, when you reflect on it, that brought you into his area of expertise?
You know, I think a lot of it probably has to do with my willingness to learn, try new things. I'm a quick learner, but I'm also very ambitious. Some might say that I'm a perfectionist because I hold a lot of pride in my work and want to represent.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Yes.
I want to represent myself well as
Yes.
my employer. And so I'm able to articulate our vision and our work product fairly well and represent us well in the community. And so I think that he saw, and also when you're a program manager, you know, then you sort of come with an underlying skill set that they know, well, if you can manage, then you can probably be managed well also.
All right. So in the personality that you bring to us, okay, there's a young but well-defined woman, all right, who has goals that she sets and that are very important to her in how she represents what she has achieved at this point, which I think is honorable. Whenever we come out of a college environment, if we're there for academic reasons, if we are there to be open to learning, it calls for a lot of thinking and decision-making on our part. So let me ask you this. Let's go back a little bit in time. When you are graduated from here in Nevada, and you have your bachelor's or your undergraduate degree, you haven't had your master's yet. When you look back on that time, what were some of the, maybe one or two of the most important decisions that came to you that you had to make? And when you go back in time in your mind, those decisions had good consequences to them.
I think probably the largest decision would be whether to stay or go. I knew my personality and knew I needed to go back to back for my degrees. Because I was afraid that I would get involved in a career and wrapped up in what was going on and I would just never get back. And so that was important to me. So really it became whether I stay here in Nevada or if I leave and either go back to California or go to a different school. And I decided, I was very fortunate and had the ability to intern for Governor Gwynn and then work at the next legislative session. And so I really felt like I had made enough connections that I could get a start career-wise if I stayed here and got my degree, and that I'd really be able to start my career. And so I think that was probably the most formative decision that I made.
All right. And what I also hear you saying is that you gave time and good thought. You didn't rush yourself.
Right.
You were willing to take a look down the long road, and you didn't just make an immediate decision that satisfied a short-term goal.
Right.
You're taking a look at long-term consequences. And I think that's so important for our audience to take that and put that on your plate. Any woman out there, regardless of age or circumstance, think through your plans.
Absolutely.
And have those goals and be consistent. Stay with them.
Right.
Stay with them. All right? Because there is that opportunity that's always available after graduating to put a space of time in there. And you may or may not come back to further education for another degree. That's always an iffy chance. But, okay, let's continue.
Okay.
So today, with where you are, do you have a personal life as well now with your career?
Absolutely. absolutely. I'm married, have 2 children, and so I am really able to balance my career and my family well.
Now, that's not an easy thing to do.
Right.
You're on emergency response, okay?
Right.
So how do you work that? How many children do you have? What are their ages?
I have 2 children. One just turned 2. The other one's about to turn 5.
Very young family.
Very young family.
Okay. And I'm gathering a totally supportive spouse.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a completely supportive family. I mean, not just my spouse, but even my extended family is very supportive.
And I can imagine that when you get together, there's a lot of great conversation about what's going on, not just in your life, but you exchange opinions, you exchange ideas, but you're willing to listen to one another. And that's a great relationship to have.
Well, if you can get a word in edgewise, we are Italian, it does get a little bit loud.
I love it, okay? I come from a mixed background of American and Persian, Middle Eastern, and their hands are always in the air talking. Okay.
Notice I'm folded.
And so am I. Trying to control that.
Yes.
All right. So, Christina, in the area that you now serve, how many years have you been in this public relations or public health?
I've been with public health about little over 2 years. I've been in emergency management now for about 3.5 years.
And during this 3.5 years in emergency management, what are the challenges that you've come up against? I have no idea what you've witnessed, what you've been through, but help us to understand that. What have you been through?
A lot of the challenges that I'm facing right now specifically would be in the preparedness arena of some of the facilities that I might work with, where I think something is incredibly important, and because I see how that preparedness would affect them should something happen. But it's just not something that they see yet. And so the struggle to show that what I'm doing, what I'm offering is really valuable.
Okay, now it's like you're dangling a carrot in front of us, all right? What types of disasters or emergency situations are you thinking about?
The biggest thing on my mind right now are for the smaller facilities, not hospitals per se, but those assisted living facilities, skilled nursing facilities, where their business continuity in the event of a disaster is really important. People don't realize that if a major disaster occurs, there's an astronomical number of businesses that do not recover. And so I've sort of taken it on as a goal of mine so that that wouldn't happen here in our region. And so that's probably one of my biggest struggles, is just making sure that other people see the importance, because I can see the big picture. And
and you need their cooperation.
Absolutely.
We're coming back to disasters.
Okay.
Don't go away.
How was school today?
Cool, we learned what to do in case there's an emergency.
Oh, will you show me?
If there is an earthquake, then you get under your desk, duck, cover, and hold. And when the shaking stops,
we evacuate the school just like a fire drill.
I'm glad you both know what to do in case of an emergency, but I'd still be worried.
check the phone, radio, or TV, and they'll tell you what to do.
Make a plan.
Assemble a kit.
Stay informed.
And be ready.
Apex SCF provides cutting-edge, hands-on training that effectively addresses today's threats of violence.
The Apex Stay Alive course teaches proven methods for personal protection and attack countermeasures that can be applied in any environment. In your home, at the workplace, or on campus, Apex will teach you the necessary skills to stay alive, including how to recognize and react to an active shooter scenario.
If you knew you had to fight for your life tomorrow, would you train today? Contact us now to sign up for a class in your region.
Support of wildland fires threatening structures.
When disaster strikes, will you be ready? Information is essential during a disaster. That's why we use the latest technology to keep you informed. When you register, you'll receive emergency alert messages on all your devices and phone numbers at once. Go to ReadyWashoe.com. Click on the Get Message icon, then just fill out this quick form. It's easy. Don't get caught unprepared. When disaster strikes, be ready.
Welcome back. Again, I'm Carol Paz, your hostess. We're here with Christina Conti, and we're going to get back to Christina's disaster experience, which is vast. But I'd like to thank our sponsors for the second half of our program. Villa Basque Deli Cafe, home of Pete's famous Basque chorizo, as well as Carpa Nevada LLC, importers of fine Portuguese olive oil, balsamic vinegar, and international teas. All right, Christina. Returning, I know that before we discuss the disasters, which have been hugely impacted upon this region, there are events coming up that I know you want to share because it's an opportunity for not only myself and the audience to learn more about what you do and how you plan. And those events are when and where?
There's a lot of emergency preparedness events that are going on in our region that the public probably wouldn't know about and wouldn't have the ability to view, but just as an educational opportunity. We are training for if there was a major earthquake because we are the third most seismically active state in the nation. And so what would we do? What if our roadways were down? What if our utilities were affected? What if our hospitals didn't have potable water? What would we do?
Yes.
And so those are occupying a lot of my time this next 3 months. But I also have something I'm very passionate about that's also coming up, and it's the Safe and Healthy Homes Fair and 5K race. And the purpose of Safe and Healthy Homes is to bring awareness to domestic violence and to help stop the cycle of violence. So it's a run that we do to raise money that supports the race itself, but then also is given to domestic violence programs here in the region. Because as you know, domestic violence doesn't really know jurisdictional boundaries.
That's right.
And so victims from Carson City might also benefit from programs in Washoe County and vice versa.
Okay, and is there a date on that again?
There is, April 20th.
All right, this coming April 20th. And will we see you as a runner?
You will see me coordinating the volunteers,
Okay.
but my family will be running. My husband will have my 2 girls and the jogger, and they're going. I believe it's only $25. We keep it very nominal. Yeah,
Okay.
and it's at Idlewild Park at the California building. So
Okay.
free food and then free
Thank you.
information booths. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, thank you. All right, let's return now to some pretty serious events. And you were a part of all of those events.
Most of them, yeah.
Most of them. Share with us what happened here in the state of Nevada, in northern Nevada, that really took immediate attention from you and the groups that you work with.
We had a very busy fall, winter of 2011, 2012.
Okay.
It started with the Amtrak train crash, moved into the airplane crash. You had the IHOP shooting.
Yes.
Also the Nugget shooting of Street Vibrations.
In Reno.
Sparks. Yeah, and Sparks, and the 2 fires, the Collin fire and the Washoe Drive fire. And they really tax the emergency response systems in all of them in different ways and different pieces of the system, which is always very interesting to see. I don't think that people quite realize that it's not just the police and the fire and the paramedics, but there's so many other people that are involved in them, depending on what the incident is.
And you know, just on a personal note, we travel by Amtrak train all the time. I have a husband who doesn't like to fly, and the conductor that was killed on that Amtrak crash was a personal friend of ours.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
Well, it's, you know, some things come with a job sometimes, and she loved what she did, and I can't think of probably, you know, she didn't want to go that way, but she was on the train that she loved between Chicago and Reno. So tell us, Christina, it takes so much planning, so much time to help the public become aware and be prepared. Pick one of those scenarios, and what was the most challenging for you?
I think I'll pick the air races, simply because it was the largest one in our area. It made national news. A lot of people are really familiar with it. I responded in 2 different capacities and really had an opportunity to see quite a bit and also serve my community in a way that really was very unique. And
I'm going to ask you to get visual and technical here. When you say, I saw a lot, what do you mean?
I first responded to REMSA, the paramedics. I went to their facility to learn about what I would do as a medical unit leader. And what that is basically tracking the patients from the site to the hospitals that they go to. It is a position that is held regionally and is done in any multiple casualty incident in the region. And I was training in that position, so that's where I started.
All right. So were you there? Did your job require you to go to the air show, to be there in person in any aspect?
My job, no.
Okay.
The job that I was training in, yes. That position goes and makes sure that the medical plan for all major events, whether it's the Montreux golf course or, a fair downtown that requires a permit, that they have a medical plan in place so that it's called mass gathering permits. And so with every mass gathering permit, they have to have a plan in there so that if something were to happen, they have the appropriate number of ambulances and medical personnel on staff. And so that position that I was training under does go to those and make sure that that is exactly what happens.
Okay. Are you saying to us that you did go to the air show, the aftermath of it?
I went to the aftermath, yes. I did not go to the site itself.
Okay. So I don't think we as the public, I certainly would put myself in that category, have any idea of the weeks and months of planning, negotiating, communicating between so many different facilities, organizations, and people to protect the public.
Absolutely.
And to step in at a moment's notice. When you say to us that you are in the efforts, and I must say that we hung on every word that came from that air show, because not only did we know some of the people that were killed, that were badly wounded, but there were people that had intended to be there that day and for whatever reason changed their mind. So there was a lot of agony. There was a lot of thinking, wow, had I been there, or I was there, and it's something that will never leave the memory.
Right, a lot of vicarious trauma.
Yes, vicarious trauma. Now, coming out of that air show, what were some of the lessons learned?
For me personally, I opened up a family assistance center for those family members with a trusted group of colleagues, and we put the center, opened it and ran it. And I think the biggest lesson for me out of that is it doesn't matter how much planning you do. Something's going to happen that's really going to tax your resources and tax your plan and just your ability to respond. And it's those relationships that you had built beforehand, and it's that planning in the generality that you had done beforehand that's really going to pull you through that, because you're not going to be able to think of a plane going into the stands and what you would do.
Yes, and I also hear you saying that because of the relationships that you've built professionally, there's a confidence there in all of you that if we have to think outside of the box on this one, let's do it. We have to.
Yes.
And had that training, had that communication, had those relationships not been established, we're lost.
Absolutely.
Because we're counting on you to make those almost executive decisions.
I would say that with absolute certainty that is correct. There were parts of the response in September that had no script to go by. It was simply...
Referring to the air show.
It was simply those personal relationships, that trust in each other, and the things that we had learned that could be applied that made those portions of the response very successful. But there was not a plan to refer back to. It was just the collective experience and that trust in each other.
Right. And now, if I focus on something that has not, to my knowledge, and correct me if I'm wrong here, has not yet happened in the state of Nevada, that's a major earthquake.
To the best of my knowledge also, it has not.
It's happened in California. It's happened around us. And I know that when we travel through Bishop, my husband says, I would like to find another way because it's constantly rumbling. Okay.
But so are we.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And it's so slight many times that we think if we even notice it.
Right.
I remember in New York State, which is not used to having earthquakes of any magnitude. And before the one hit a few years ago in Virginia, it caught Washington, D.C., it caught Virginia, it caught all of the East Coast by total shock. It just doesn't happen there. Right. And yet, as you say, the rumblings are going on. So what do we need to know about the possibility of a major quake? I mean, it can happen.
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, we're the third most actively seismically active state in the nation. They're happening all the time. You could go on the UNR seismology lab, and I think that people would be floored by how often we're having earthquakes. I found out today we've got a little swarm going on. I think they said in Doyle, I'd have to look it up, but that they're just happening, a lot of little mini ones that people don't even realize.
Or take seriously.
Yeah, because you don't quite feel it, or you don't realize that's what it is, and it's not measurable, and the research is conflicting whether a lot of little ones means you're about to have a big one, or a lot of little ones just means that there's some tension going on in the earth, and that's all it ends up being. So,
and you know, I was in a major earthquake in the Middle East. And had we had seismologists, had we had some kind of advance warning, so much would have been different. And this was 600 miles away from the capital city of Tehran. And yet the building that I was in, that I was living in, where my home was swaying. Right. Nothing was earthquake proof.
Right.
And the thing that we did was to run outside and watch the water sloshing from side to side in these garden pools or major pools, and then to learn just 2 days later in a very remote area called Tabal that the entire oasis of that town completely disappeared into the undergrounds, the bowels of the earth. Everybody was lost.
Yeah, it's scary.
And thinking how fortunate that we are, that we have you, that we have seismologists, scientists who are keeping track for us.
Absolutely.
All right. One of the things that people don't like is panic.
Right.
They don't like to hear about these things. Let's not even discuss it, okay? Let's let somebody else worry about it. And yet, how do you counteract that?
Personally, I think knowledge is power. You know, I mean,
Me too. Me too.
You can, it's scary, the unknown, and so you can combat that fear with some actions. You know, families can have their personal kits in their home.
Plan A.
Plan A. You know, shelter in place. If you stay in your home, but you don't have electricity, you don't have water, can you survive? Do you have your kit? If you have to leave, do you have everything where you just grab a box and you go, so that you're not putting your family in harm by staying longer than you need to because you have to get that last thing? Things can be replaced, but people can't. And so some of that pre-planning, so that if you get that phone call, making sure that people are signed up for Code Red, is what it's called in Washoe County, but the reverse 911 system, so that you get a phone call if your neighborhood is in danger and you listen to it. I mean, that's the one thing that's very frustrating that you see is throughout the nation. I mean, it's not obviously just here, but there's a call to evacuate and people say, oh, I'm not going to leave just yet. Well,
it's there for a reason. It's there for a
reason. They
reason.
don't say, let's evacuate people just to see how they handle it. You're being evacuated because you're not in a safe place, and the fire or whatever may not be right there, but if it takes a turn, it's coming right at you, and they want to keep you safe. And
yes. Well, Christina, all I can say is thank you so much for making us aware of many things that we take for granted and we don't pay attention to. Believe me, I'm listening to everything from now on. Thank you so much. Okay. Take care. We'll be back next week with a very special guest again. In the meantime, have a good evening. Good night.